The silent departure. The grand chambers of the Galactic Confederation fell silent as Ambassador Elena Reyes approached the speaker's podium. The vast hall, designed to accommodate representatives from over 300 spacefaring civilizations, seemed to swallow her small human form. Yet she stood tall, her posture betraying none of the exhaustion accumulated through 15 years of fruitless diplomacy. Distinguished members of the Confederation, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. For the 8th time in 50 years, Earth formally requests admission to this esteemed body. Subtle movements rippled through the assembled aliens. The insectoid shrill delegates clicked their mandibles in barely concealed derision. The serpentine Draci representatives coiled tighter, their scales shimmering under the chamber's lights. Only the Tellurians, themselves relatively new members, showed any sign of support, with their soft blue glow intensifying briefly. High Chancellor Vox Theron of the Mithrani rose slowly, his 4 arms extended in the traditional gesture of formal address. The ancient species had led the Confederation for millennia, their technological superiority unquestioned. The Council has reviewed Earth's petition, the Chancellor announced, his translucent skin pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. While we acknowledge humanity's remarkable progress since achieving faster-than-light travel, we must again decline your application for full membership. Elena's face remained impassive, though her knuckles whitened as she gripped the podium. May I ask on what grounds, Chancellor? Earth has met every criterion established in the Confederation Charter. Our technology, culture, ethical frameworks, and diplomatic history all satisfy the published requirements. The Chancellor's skin flashed a pattern that the human translator implant rendered as condescension. Requirements are minimum standards. Ambassador Reyes, the Council must also consider compatibility. Compatibility, Elena repeated flatly. Yes, your species exhibits concerning patterns of behavior that suggest potential instability within our carefully balanced galactic community. A Draci representative slithered forward, tongue flicking. Humans are unpredictable. You oscillate between cooperation and conflict without discernible patterns. All simulations indicate you would disrupt established power hierarchies. We have maintained peace on Earth for over a century, Elena countered. After nearly destroying yourselves multiple times, hissed the Draci. Your historical records show a species that repeatedly approaches self-annihilation, then miraculously pulls back. Such volatility is unprecedented. Elena studied the chamber, noting the nodding heads and gestures of agreement. This was not a negotiation. It was a formality. The decision had been made long before she entered the room. I understand, she said finally. On behalf of Earth's united governments, I thank the Council for its consideration. Without another word, she turned and walked from the podium, her footsteps echoing in the silent chamber. No one called her back. No one offered compromise. The great doors closed behind her with a definitive thud. 3 days later, the Earth Council convened in Geneva. Representatives from every nation gathered as Elena delivered her report. When she finished, President Kamari of the African Union stood slowly. 50 years, she said. Half a century of good faith efforts to join their community. We have contributed technology, resources, and humanitarian aid to Confederation worlds. We have respected their borders and laws. And still, they reject us. Director Zhao of the Asian Coalition nodded gravely. They will never accept us as equals. Their entire system is built on maintaining the current hierarchy, with the ancient races at the top and everyone else beneath them. I believe, Elena said carefully, that it is time to consider a different approach. The chamber grew still. For decades, Earth's strategy had been consistent: prove humanity's worthiness through peaceful cooperation, scientific contribution, and diplomatic engagement. The suggestion of change was momentous. President Kamari smiled thinly. Ambassador Reyes, I believe you have a proposal. Elena activated the central holographic display. Operation Silent Departure, she announced. The display showed a complete withdrawal plan. recalling all human diplomats, scientists, traders, and citizens from Confederation space, terminating all trade agreements, closing borders to Confederation vessels, severing all official communications. "This is extreme," murmured the European representative. "The economic impact will be significant but manageable," Elena interrupted. "We've run the simulations. With controlled withdrawal and redirection of our trade to independent frontier worlds, we can maintain 83% of our current economic activity." "And the purpose?" asked President Kamari. Elena's eyes hardened. "To show them what they lose when humanity walks away." The vote was called. One by one, Earth's nations registered their decision. The result: unanimous approval. Operation Silent Departure would begin immediately. On the Confederation capital world, High Observer Zinexor watched the Earth proceedings with mild interest. As the Confederation's chief intelligence officer assigned to human affairs, he had expected outrage, perhaps even threats. The calm, unified withdrawal was unexpected. He composed a message to the Council. Humans acting predictably emotional. Economic pressure will bring them back to negotiations within months. What he couldn't see was the activity beneath the surface of Earth's apparent surrender. In secure facilities around the planet, projects that had been theoretical were suddenly greenlit. Resources previously dedicated to Confederation trade were redirected. Military ships that had been ceremonial escorts for diplomatic missions received new orders. The withdrawal happened with surprising efficiency. Within 1 month, every human diplomat, merchant, scientist, and tourist had returned from Confederation space. No dramatic scenes, no public protests, simply a quiet, orderly departure that left behind empty offices and abandoned research stations. At first, the disruption seemed minor. Humans had never been the largest trading partner for most Confederation worlds. But small gaps began to appear in various supply chains. Several frontier planets found themselves short on medical supplies that Earth had quietly provided. Agricultural worlds noticed the absence of specialized equipment that had improved their yields. "Look at them, throwing away their future over hurt feelings," laughed Traslar, the Confederation's trade minister, as he reviewed the latest reports. "They'll come crawling back when their economy collapses." His assistant, a young Tellurian, looked less certain. "Our monitoring shows they're redirecting all their trade to non-Confederation worlds. The outer systems are seeing increased human activity. Those backwater planets are hardly a replacement for Confederation markets." Traslar dismissed the concern with a wave of his three-fingered hand. As months passed, strange reports began reaching Confederation intelligence. Earth had begun building massive structures in orbit around their planet and throughout their solar system. Automated defense platforms appeared around Jupiter and Saturn. Mining operations on Mars doubled, then tripled in size. "They are fortifying their entire system," reported Zinexor to a closed council session. "Our long-range scans show significant infrastructure development." "Are they planning aggression?" asked a nervous Trill representative. "Unlikely," the intelligence chief replied. "The defensive positioning suggests they're preparing for isolation, not expansion. They're building a wall around their entire system." High Chancellor Vox Theron remained unimpressed. "Let them waste resources on pointless defenses. They cannot survive alone forever." 1 year passed, then 2. Communication from Earth remained silent. Confederation monitoring stations detected no outgoing transmissions except for tightly focused messages directed to non-Confederation worlds beyond their borders. What troubled some Council observers was not just Earth's continued silence, but how well they seemed to be managing it. There were no signs of economic collapse or social unrest. Instead, their orbital infrastructure continued to grow at an impressive rate. "Most concerning," said Zinexor during a briefing, "is that we've lost track of nearly 40% of their deep space vessels. Large ships capable of interstellar travel have simply vanished." "Where could they have gone?" asked a junior council member. "Unknown, but there are reports from beyond our borders. Strange ships with no identifying marks helping smaller non-Confederation worlds with infrastructure projects. Advanced technology appearing in unexpected places. In the Grand Council chamber, a small faction of representatives began to voice concern, but the majority, led by the ancient races, remained dismissive. "Let them hide," Chancellor Vox Theron announced confidently. "When they emerge, they will find the galaxy has continued without them." But behind his confident words, a small doubt had begun to form. The humans were not behaving according to any pattern the Confederation had seen before. They had withdrawn completely, yet showed no signs of suffering for it. They had disappeared from known space, yet their influence seemed to be growing in the shadows. 5 years after Earth's departure, the topic rarely came up anymore in council meetings. Most members had adjusted to the absence of humans, filling gaps in trade with alternatives. The Confederation continued as it always had, slowly, deliberately, with the ancient races guiding the course of galactic civilization, until the day everything changed. The reckoning. On the distant planet Corva, a Confederation monitoring station picked up unusual activity. Agent Trell, a mid-level intelligence officer with gray skin and sharp eyes, reviewed the scanner data with growing concern. "Another unidentified ship," he muttered, highlighting the sensor reading. "That's the 5th this month." The vessels appeared briefly at the edge of monitored space before disappearing, leaving no trace of their destination. They carried no Confederation identification and ignored all hailing frequencies. Trell's supervisor, a Mithrani, dismissed his concerns. Smugglers, nothing more. Focus on actual threats. But Trell was not convinced. He requested permission to visit several border worlds where rumors had been spreading. After bureaucratic delays, the Council granted his request with minimal resources. The marketplace on Nexus 7 buzzed with activity. As a trading hub just beyond Confederation jurisdiction, it attracted merchants from dozens of worlds. Trill moved through the crowd in plain clothes, listening more than speaking. "The medical technology saved our entire colony," a merchant told his companion at a nearby table. "No questions asked, no payment demanded. They just delivered the vaccines and left." "Who were they?" asked his friend. "Wouldn't say exactly." The merchant lowered his voice, but the captain had 5 fingers on each hand. Trell's antenna twitched with interest as he moved closer. "I heard similar stories from Kelta Prime," the second merchant replied. Advanced farming equipment appearing overnight doubled their crop yield. No Confederation markings, but the design. Everyone knows where it came from. 2 weeks later, Trell visited Kelta Prime himself. The agricultural world had always struggled with poor soil and harsh seasons. Now fields of golden grain stretched as far as the eye could see. "Our new irrigation system," explained the local governor proudly, "combined with genetically modified seeds that resist our planet's fungal infections, has transformed our world. Confederation records show your world doesn't have the technical capability to develop such systems," Trell noted. The governor's smile faded. "Perhaps Confederation records are incomplete." "Who helped you?" Trell pressed. "Friends," the governor said firmly. "Friends who asked nothing in return except that we remember who was there for us when we needed help." On his 7th world in 3 months, Trell finally got the confirmation he sought. A security camera had captured images of the mysterious visitors. Though they wore unmarked gray uniforms, their physical features were unmistakable. Humans. More disturbing than their presence was what they were doing, installing advanced defense systems for a world that had recently refused to pay increased Confederation taxes. Back on the Confederation capital, Trell presented his findings to a small committee. "Humans are operating beyond our borders," he explained, showing the evidence. "Not as refugees or exiles, but as organized groups with advanced technology. They're forming relationships with non-Confederation worlds." "To what end?" asked a council member. "I believe they're building a network," Trell replied. "Economic, technological, perhaps military. They're creating influence without our knowledge or approval." High Chancellor Vox Theron, who had joined the meeting late, laughed dismissively. A few charity missions to borderland planets. This hardly constitutes a threat. Trell stood his ground. With respect, High Chancellor, I don't believe this is charity. In every case, these worlds had resources or strategic positions that could be valuable. The humans aren't just helping. They're recruiting. Recruiting for what? Vox Theron demanded. Trell displayed his final piece of evidence, intercepts of fragmented communications mentioning something called the Terran Cooperative. The announcement came without warning on 27 planets simultaneously. Public broadcasts interrupted regular programming, with the same message playing across different worlds, each in their local language but with identical content. Today marks the founding of the Terran Cooperative, a coalition of independent worlds dedicated to mutual prosperity and defense. The Confederation's emergency session convened within hours. Representatives watched the broadcast with growing alarm as the list of founding members scrolled across their screens. 34 worlds, all previously considered minor powers, had joined this new alliance. "This is unprecedented," said a junior council member, voice tight with concern. "These worlds have little in common except their location along our borders." High Chancellor Vox Theron's skin flashed with patterns of rage. "This is clearly Earth's doing. They've been planning this for years." The broadcast continued, outlining the cooperative's principles: mutual defense, free trade, technological cooperation, and most troubling to the Confederation, complete independence from Confederation authority. "The time of submitting to distant powers who do not understand our needs has ended," declared the speaker, a dignified female from Kelta Prime. "We choose our own path forward." What truly shocked the Council came next. The broadcast showed the cooperative's defense fleet, ships of advanced design that no minor world possessed. Their hulls bore a striking emblem: a blue Earth surrounded by stars. "These vessels will protect cooperative trade routes and territory," the announcement continued. "Any aggression against member worlds will be met with unified response." 3 days later, the Confederation dispatched a diplomatic envoy to Nexus 7, which had emerged as the cooperative's headquarters. Ambassador Krivos, chosen for his reputation as a skilled negotiator, led the mission. "Remind them of their treaty obligations," Vox Theron instructed before Krivos departed. "Make it clear that the Confederation will not tolerate this rebellion." Krivos' ship was met at the edge of Nexus 7's system by an escort of cooperative vessels. Their design was unlike anything in Confederation records, sleek, with unusual energy signatures that the Confederation ship's sensors struggled to analyze. On the planet's surface, Krivos was escorted to a modern facility that hadn't existed 6 months earlier. The meeting room was simple but elegant, with representatives from several cooperative worlds seated around a circular table. At the head of the table sat a human. "Ambassador Krivos," the human said, rising to greet him. "I am Admiral Elena Reyes, Security Coordinator for the Cooperative. Welcome to Nexus 7. Krivos struggled to hide his surprise. "I was not informed that Earth was officially part of this arrangement." Reyes smiled. "Earth is a founding member and equal partner in the Cooperative. Unlike the Confederation, we don't believe in hierarchies of species. Partners who provide military technology far beyond what these worlds should possess," Krivos noted sharply. "We share with friends," Reyes replied simply, something the Confederation never understood. Krivos delivered the Confederation's message, emphasizing treaty obligations and hinting at consequences for non-compliance. The cooperative representatives listened politely but remained unmoved. When he finished, Reyes spoke clearly. "Please convey our response to the Confederation. The Terran Cooperative respects existing trade agreements but rejects Confederation authority over our internal affairs. We seek neither conflict nor Confederation membership." "This defiance will not stand," Krivos warned. Reyes leaned forward. "This isn't defiance, Ambassador. It's independence. Please also deliver this personal message. We no longer seek your approval. We found better friends." When Krivos returned to the Confederation, his report caused an uproar. The revelation that humans were directly leading the cooperative confirmed the worst fears of many members. Their fleet is technologically advanced, Krivos explained, and Admiral Rice spoke with absolute confidence. Did you detect any weaknesses? Asked Vox Theron. The cooperative is new. There may be divisions we could exploit, but I must warn the Council. The human presence changes everything. They have been planning this for years while we dismissed them. The Grand Council chamber descended into chaos as factions formed around competing strategies for dealing with the Terran cooperative. We must crush this rebellion immediately, thundered War Chief Grax of the Krill, his mandibles clicking in agitation. Show them the price of defiance. And start a war we may not win, countered a Tellurian representative. We have no idea of their true military capability. High Chancellor Vox Theron struggled to maintain order as the debate raged. The Confederation, accustomed to unity in the face of lesser species, found itself deeply divided. Eventually, Vox Theron called for a formal vote. Diplomatic engagement or military action. The aggressive faction won by a narrow margin. It is decided, Vox Theron announced. We will authorize a disciplinary action against key cooperative worlds, beginning with Nexus 7. War Chief Grax will lead the operation. Grax stood proudly. I will assemble our most powerful fleet. This rebellion will be crushed within a standard week. War Chief Grax stood on the bridge of the Invincible, the largest battleship in the Confederation fleet. Around him, 200 warships moved into formation. This force represented the combined military might of the strongest Confederation species, a hammer designed to crush the Terran cooperative in a single blow. Communications, broadcast on all frequencies when we arrive, Grax ordered. I want the rebels to see their doom approaching. The jump to Nexus 7 took 8 hours. As the fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system, Grax expected to find panic and disarray. Instead, they were met with silence. No ships detected, War Chief reported his sensor officer. The orbital stations appear, abandoned. Grax's mandibles clicked in confusion. Scan again. They can't have evacuated an entire system. Sir, called the communications officer, we're receiving a transmission. Audio only. Play it, Grax commanded. Confederation fleet, came Admiral Rice's calm voice. You have entered cooperative territory with hostile intent. You have 30 seconds to reverse course, or we will defend ourselves. Laughter erupted across the bridge. They're bluffing, Grax said confidently. Where is this mighty defense they threatened? Advance toward the planet. Prepare main weapons. The fleet moved forward in tight formation. As they passed the orbit of Nexus 7's outer moon, the sensor officer suddenly jerked upright, energy signatures appearing everywhere. There was panic in his voice. His words were cut short as hundreds of small objects activated around the Confederation fleet, hidden among orbital debris and asteroids. They had been invisible until now. Evasive maneuvers, Grax shouted. Too late. The defense platforms unleashed precisely targeted energy beams, not at the ships themselves, but at their engines and weapon systems. 30 Confederation vessels lost power instantly. Another 50 reported weapons failures. They knew exactly where to hit us, gasped the tactical officer. How did they? Incoming vessels, the sensor officer interrupted. Hundreds of them, emerging from the planet's shadow. The cooperative ships were unlike anything Grax had ever seen, smaller than Confederation warships, but moving with incredible speed. They darted between the larger Confederation vessels, their weapons firing with surgical precision, disabling rather than destroying. On the main view screen, Grax watched in horror as his mighty fleet was systematically neutralized. Within 20 minutes, 3/4 of his ships were dead in space, their power cores shut down by weapons of unprecedented sophistication. Sir, the communications officer said quietly, Admiral Rice is hailing us again. Grax's mandibles trembled with rage and fear. Put her through. Elena Reyes appeared on the screen, her expression calm but determined. War Chief Grax, your fleet has been neutralized. We could have destroyed your vessels, but that is not our way. I offer you terms. Withdraw your remaining functional ships and take your disabled vessels in tow. Return to the Confederation and deliver our message. What message? Grax hissed. That humanity did not leave the galactic stage. We simply chose to build a better one. Her eyes hardened. The era of Confederation dominance is over. We will defend our allies and our interests, but we remain open to establishing relations between equals. 3 days later, a chastened War Chief Grax delivered his report to a stunned Confederation Council. The scope of the defeat was unprecedented in their history. They could have annihilated us, he concluded. Instead, they let us go with a message. High Chancellor Vox Theron's skin had lost its luminescence, a sign of extreme distress among his species. How? He asked simply. How did they advance so quickly? How did they build such a force in secret? Because you never really saw us, came a voice from the back of the chamber. Heads turned as Elena Reyes walked confidently down the central aisle, flanked by representatives from various cooperative worlds. She had not been invited, yet the chamber's security systems had allowed her entry without alarm. For 50 years, you saw what you wanted to see, she continued. You saw a young, chaotic species seeking admission to your exclusive club. You never considered that we might be building something better. She reached the speaker's podium and faced the assembled council. The Terran Cooperative extends an offer of peace to the Galactic Confederation. We have no desire for war or conquest, but the old order is ending. The future belongs to those who recognize that diversity breeds innovation, that cooperation yields greater rewards than domination. She swept her gaze across the chamber, meeting the eyes of each council member in turn. 5 years ago, I stood at this podium asking for admission. Today, I stand here offering an alliance between equals. The choice is yours. Adapt to the new reality or become irrelevant to it. In the silence that followed, the ancient races of the Confederation faced a truth they had never before encountered in their millennia of dominance. The galaxy had changed around them while they weren't looking. And humanity, unpredictable, volatile, innovative humanity, had been the catalyst. The era of Confederation supremacy had ended not with war or revolution, but with a quiet withdrawal and a patient, methodical construction of an alternative. Humanity hadn't fought the system. They had simply built a better one and let the worlds choose. As the representatives of the ancient races exchanged glances, they realized that the greatest threat to their power had never been human aggression. It had been human creativity. And they had missed it entirely, until it was too late.